What happens if the West keeps ignoring Ibrahim Traoré? While the West continues to withhold recognition from Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the rest of the world seems to be moving on without it. In a bold diplomatic moment, 10 countries recently acknowledged Traoré as the legitimate president of Burkina Faso, making it clear that Western disapproval holds less weight than ever before. So, why exactly is the West so hostile toward this young African leader? And how long can this resistance last? Earlier this year, history was made in Ouagadougou. Inside the presidential palace, a powerful gathering took place. Delegations and ambassadors from 10 different nations formally recognized Traoré's leadership. It wasn't just a handshake or a curtsy visit. It was a strong public declaration that Burkina Faso, despite its battles with terrorism and economic hardship, has earned its place at the diplomatic table. For Traoré, this wasn't just about gaining international legitimacy. It was a symbolic victory over decades of foreign control, neocolonial influence, and global double standards. It was a loud, unspoken message to the West. Burkina Faso will no longer ask for permission to govern itself. The refusal by Western nations to acknowledge Traoré exposes a deeper conflict, one rooted in centuries of foreign interference in African affairs. But the unified stance of these 10 countries also sent a message of their own: sovereignty matters. And it's time Africa's choices are respected. In the days leading up to the event, many wondered whether these nations would cave to Western pressure. But when the moment came, they stood firm. Leaders from Africa, Asia, and Latin America joined hands with Traoré, offering not just support but admiration. The applause in the room wasn't just diplomatic, it was personal. It was a salute to Burkina Faso's determination to take its future into its own hands. Since independence in 1960, Burkina Faso has weathered political storms, coups, economic strain, and foreign meddling. Every chapter in its history has tested the nation's spirit. But with Traoré, there's a sense that something different is taking shape. A leadership not built on Western approval, but on national pride and self-determination. This ceremony marked a turning point. It proved that Burkina Faso is no longer a forgotten player in African politics. Under Traoré, the country is stepping onto the global stage with confidence. Of course, the West continues to justify its rejection by citing concerns about democracy, human rights, and electoral transparency. But many see these claims as selective and politically convenient. After all, how often has the West looked the other way when its allies trampled those same principles? In contrast, the nations that recognized Traoré focused on one thing: the will of the Burkinabe people. Their recognition was not just about diplomatic ties. It was about honoring Burkina Faso's sovereign right to choose its own path. The mood in the palace that day: a mix of pride and quiet defiance. Ambassadors from nations like Russia, Algeria, Germany, and Rwanda handed over official credentials, signaling a new era of diplomacy, one that no longer depends on Western blessing. So, the question remains: why is the West still refusing to accept this reality? And how long can they deny what the world is beginning to embrace? Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative content like this one. Now, back to the issue at hand. At the heart of the West's resistance to recognizing Captain Ibrahim Traoré lies a complex web of politics, history, and power. His rise to leadership in Burkina Faso, through 2 rapid military coups in 2022, shattered the traditional democratic playbook that the West has long promoted across Africa. That disruption alone sent shockwaves through Western capitals. Traoré's seizure of power may have won him support at home, but for many in the West, it triggered alarms. Why? Because for them, legitimacy comes through the ballot box, not the battlefield. His lack of electoral endorsement has led to questions about his right to lead. But here's the real question: Why does his method of taking office matter so much, specifically to the West? Since taking office, Traoré has ruled with a firm hand. His administration has been accused of restricting foreign media, managing the flow of information, and centralizing power. These moves, while seen by his supporters as steps toward national sovereignty, are viewed by critics in the West as signs of democratic backsliding. They worry that his government is veering into authoritarianism, where free speech is limited and opposition voices are silenced. But there's another, perhaps more pressing reason for the West's discomfort: Traoré's clear pivot away from Western alliances, especially France, and toward Russia. The expulsion of French troops, the reopening of the Russian embassy, and his visible presence at the Russia-Africa summit all signal a dramatic geopolitical shift. In a world where East-West tensions are rising, Burkina Faso's new orientation feels, to the West, like a growing threat. Then there are Traoré's bold promises, some might say too bold. He's vowed to make Burkina Faso food self-sufficient, to build a nuclear power plant, and even to produce electric vehicles. These ambitious goals have electrified nationalists at home, but sparked skepticism abroad. Western analysts often dismiss them as unrealistic, but for Traoré's supporters, they're a sign of visionary leadership in a region too often told to aim low. Adding fuel to the fire is his unapologetically anti-colonial stance. Traoré has challenged African nations to reclaim their sovereignty and stop bending to the will of former colonial powers. That rhetoric resonates deeply with a younger generation across the continent, but it also threatens the legacy and leverage that the West has maintained in Africa for decades. Still, despite all the criticism, Traoré is gaining ground. 10 countries have now formally recognized him as Burkina Faso's legitimate leader. Why? Because beyond the current political uncertainty, Burkina Faso remains a valuable partner in both regional security and global economics. For starters, it has a track record. Despite its setbacks, Burkina Faso made notable strides toward democracy in the last decade, like its peaceful presidential election in 2015 and municipal elections in 2016, with support from international institutions like USAID. That foundation still means something to global observers. Then there's its wealth. Gold might be the biggest export, but the country also sits on untapped reserves of manganese, zinc, silver, phosphate, and even diamonds. For nations looking to invest, partner, or gain a foothold in West Africa's booming mining industry, Burkina Faso is a prime destination. Strategically, the country matters. Historically, it's played a stabilizing role in the region. Under leaders like Blaise Compaoré, Burkina Faso helped resolve crises in neighbors like Niger and Togo. Today, as the Sahel faces mounting threats, armed conflict, humanitarian crises, and terrorism, Burkina Faso's position has only grown more important. In a region teetering between chaos and transformation, Traoré represents both a challenge and a new opportunity. While the West may hesitate, the rest of the world is already adjusting to this new reality. And as history shows, those who adapt to change tend to lead it. In recent years, Burkina Faso has taken major steps to strengthen its regional and international standing. Its ties with neighboring West African nations have deepened, particularly with Ghana, where collaboration now spans across sectors from trade to security. A once tense territorial dispute with Mali was resolved not through force, but diplomacy, setting a powerful example of peaceful conflict resolution in a region often plagued by unrest. This commitment to regional unity has made Burkina Faso an increasingly attractive partner for nations that value integration and collective progress. Stability, growth, and security in West Africa don't happen in isolation. They are built through cooperation. And Burkina Faso is proving that it understands this better than most. On the international stage, the country continues to show up. It holds active membership in organizations like the International Criminal Court, and the Litako Goma Authority. These aren't just symbolic affiliations. They offer Burkina Faso platforms to speak up, build alliances, and attract much-needed foreign investment. For a nation grappling with poverty, food insecurity, and underdeveloped infrastructure, these connections are more than diplomatic, they're lifelines. Global partners and humanitarian organizations have responded by offering aid, technical assistance, and development programs. The benefits of this support are clear: stronger infrastructure, better living standards, and a more stable foundation for long-term growth. Everyone wins when a country stabilizes: its people, its neighbors, and the international community. So here's the question: with all these steps forward, why does the West still refuse to recognize Ibrahim Traoré as Burkina Faso's legitimate leader? The answer goes deeper than politics. It goes straight to the heart of global power dynamics. For generations, Western powers have approached Africa not as equal partners, but as strategic assets. Their partnerships often prioritize access to raw materials, favorable trade deals, and geopolitical control. And resource-rich nations like Burkina Faso have frequently found themselves on the losing end of that equation, rich in gold and minerals, yet poor in local benefit. Western development aid often comes with strings attached, conditions that reinforce Western interests while limiting the sovereignty of African states. Whether through economic policies, military agreements, or political expectations, the message has been consistent: play by our rules or risk being sidelined. But Traoré is rewriting that script. Since coming to power, he's made it clear that Burkina Faso will no longer accept deals that exploit its people or resources. He's demanding fairness, mutually beneficial agreements that prioritize national development and put the interests of the Burkinabe people first. Traoré's bold vision emphasizes independence, not just from foreign militaries or corporate contracts, but from the entire neocolonial structure that has shaped Africa's modern history. He wants to build a Burkina Faso that stands on its own, producing its own food, powering its own industries, and charting its own course. In recent developments, Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, has significantly strengthened its diplomatic and economic ties with Venezuela, marking a strategic pivot towards South-South cooperation and a shared vision of anti-imperialist solidarity. On February 7, 2024, a high-level delegation from Burkina Faso, led by Foreign Minister Jean-Marie Traoré, visited Caracas, where they signed 20 comprehensive cooperation agreements with Venezuela. These agreements span various sectors, including aeronautics, agriculture, civil protection, culture, sports, oil, education, science, and technology. The signing ceremony, held at the Casa Amarilla, was described by Venezuela's Foreign Minister Yvonne Gil as a fruitful and successful step towards deepening bilateral relations. Further solidifying this partnership, Presidents Ibrahim Traoré and Nicolás Maduro met on May 8, 2025, in Moscow during the 80th anniversary celebrations of the Soviet victory in World War II. During their meeting, both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening cooperation between their nations. President Maduro emphasized the importance of building strong ties between Africa and South America, stating, "We are brothers and sisters of the same mother, Africa, and today, we have embarked on a new path together." This burgeoning relationship is part of Burkina Faso's broader strategy to diversify its international partnerships, especially after distancing itself from traditional Western allies. The collaboration with Venezuela reflects a mutual desire to establish equitable and respectful international relations, focusing on shared development goals and resistance to external coercive measures. The agreements and high-level engagements between Burkina Faso and Venezuela underscore a significant shift in Burkina Faso's foreign policy, aligning more closely with nations that advocate for sovereignty, mutual respect, and collaborative development. This partnership not only enhances bilateral ties, but also contributes to a growing network of South-South cooperation aimed at fostering sustainable and inclusive growth. That's a direct challenge to the Western order. His anti-colonial message doesn't just inspire Burkinabe citizens, it resonates across the continent. He's calling on African nations to stop surrendering their futures to outside powers and to start reclaiming control over their economies, their politics, and their destinies. And that makes him dangerous, not to his people, but to those who have long benefited from Africa's weakness. The West's hesitation, then, isn't about democracy or human rights. It's about influence. It's about power. It's about a system that has served the few at the expense of the many, and a leader who's daring to disrupt it. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's vision stands in bold defiance of the traditional Western playbook. He speaks the language of sovereignty, equity, and mutual respect, terms that challenge a global system long skewed in favor of Western power. And that's exactly why his rise has made the West uncomfortable. For decades, the rules of engagement in Africa have been written in boardrooms thousands of miles away, from trade deals to mining contracts, often favoring Western corporations and leaving African nations with crumbs from their own resources. But Traoré wants to rewrite those rules. He's demanding partnerships that are fair, agreements that benefit the Burkinabe people, not just foreign shareholders. And with that, he threatens more than profit margins. He threatens a system of influence. By forging ties with non-Western powers, particularly Russia, Traoré is realigning Burkina Faso's geopolitical compass. That alone sends alarm bells ringing in Western capitals. Add to that his calls for self-reliance, building local industries, rejecting dependency, and investing in homegrown development. And the picture becomes clear. Traoré is not just resisting the West, he's creating an entirely new model. In response, the West has leaned on its usual arsenal: diplomatic snubs, economic pressure, and media narratives. Traoré is painted as a dictator, a military strongman who bypassed democratic norms. But missing from those portrayals are the deeper truths: his push for resource justice, his rejection of neocolonial terms, and his appeal for African unity. What's being ignored is the real struggle in Burkina Faso. Not just political instability, but the daily grind of survival: youth unemployment, families digging for gold in hazardous mines, entire regions left behind by development. In this context, Traoré's model is not just political, it's existential. And now, countries outside the Western sphere are listening. China, Russia, and a rising coalition across Africa, Asia, and Latin America are stepping forward, not with lectures, but with offers. Infrastructure, energy, trade, technology. Investment that doesn't come with political conditions, but with mutual interest. This shift is more than diplomatic, it's symbolic. It signals that the old ways may no longer work, that the influence once wielded through conditional aid and controlled narratives is weakening. 10 countries have already stepped up to recognize Traoré. That number may grow. And with it, so does the idea that Africa is not just a resource base. It is a sovereign bloc, capable of choosing its own path. So, what happens next? Will the West adapt, rethink its approach, respect Africa's agency, and engage on equal terms? Or will it double down, spreading misinformation, tightening economic screws, and clinging to a legacy of control? Because one thing is certain, the world is watching. And Africa is wide awake. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.